Hello, this is a video about a introduction to GNS3. There's my little checklist to do, things to do. First thing we're going to do is talk about the virtual machine and what that actually does in GNS3. And then we'll get to GNS3 and we'll talk about the various functions here, which I'm sure I'll have to come back here and refresh my memory. So let's get started. There's a lot to cover. I'm going to shift down to my other desktop. I am in a Linux environment. You'll be probably running this in a Windows environment. GNS3 is a network simulator, a virtualization software. It allows us to virtualize many different network appliances, firewalls, routers, switches. And we're able to run the, we won't talk about, we're going to run them in a virtual machine for efficiency's sake. It's easier to run them in a virtual machine. We'll talk about that right now. Now, since I'm in a Linux environment, and you'll probably be in a Windows environment, but I'm in a Linux environment, I'm running KVM. Why am I not running one of my more favorite virtualization pieces of software, VirtualBox, is because VirtualBox does not use KVM. Let's go back to the middle desktop. Sorry for the schizophrenia there. I'm going to CD into dev devices and then do a quick ls, and you'll see KVM right here in the middle. KVM is kind of an inherent strategy to Linux and how to do virtualization. VirtualBox decides not to do that strategy. Quick, easy way to put it. Not 100% true, but it's close enough to the truth. So let me shift back down to my bottom workstation or bottom workspace, or whatever you want to call it, desktop. So what I'm going to be using is KVM in Linux because it runs it. Now, in a Windows environment, you're probably going to use VMware, VMware Player, VMware Workstation, Fusion. Well, I can't speak for Fusion actually, but I'm thinking they all use KVM, and they'll all be able to run this technology here called QEMU, which I can't tell you what it stands for off the top of my head, but it's integrated in with KVM, and VMware can do that. Now, in a lot of my reading, you cannot run QEMU images in a VirtualBox environment. So I had to give up that hunt and use KVM, which I'm kind of enjoying. As you can see, it's a lot like Hypervisor. If I hit play here, it's not going to bring up anything. It's just going to boot it up, right? It doesn't bring me directly into the machine. The machine's just running in the background as a virtual machine, eating up resources. So I can click open and bring it up, which I'll do right now. So if I click open, there I am. This machine itself is actually just a Linux box, as you see right in the lower left-hand corner. You can go back in the video and see. It says KVM exists. We can run at full capacity, or we can do KVM images. Let me bring up the shell real quick. I ran into a slight issue in which the network wasn't working when I was just making the previous video, so I got some practice. And this is about where I failed. And I want to, in the meantime, real quick, just test the network internet connectivity. This is a utility that you might use yourself. Anyway, this is just running a Linux box itself. Hopefully it has internet. Okay, good. It didn't before. Now, the reason why I didn't have it before, because I was running my VPN software, ExpressVPN, which does cause connectivity issues. So that might be something you might want to keep in mind while troubleshooting. Let me bring up the shell real quick. Here I am, and it's good old-fashioned Linux. If I cat etc, let me put a / on that, and OS release, you will see that it's running 1804.3 Bionic Beaver. It's just fun to say Bionic Beaver. And there it is. So it is a simple Linux box with this little kind of shell built around it. As you can see, it's using 10.16.2.150. That is a static IP, so you're going to need one network. Let me bring up the hardware here. View details. Here's the hardware. Most notably, I have two disks. Disk 1, which is the actual operating system itself. It gets mounted as root, and this gets mounted as, if we go back to the actual view console, images and projects are stored in OPT options GNS3. That's what that second hard drive gets mounted as, is OPT. It has more storage. So they have 2 hard drives. That's something we're going to have to worry about. I'm going to make a separate video on how to install it, particularly on a Windows box. I have my old laptop here, my what is it, Toshiba? Yeah, Toshiba laptop that I'm going to be booting up into Windows, and I will show you how to create a Windows machine running gns3. This one is just to try to get you familiar with its the facts here. So we have 2 disks and we have 2 NICs. The NICs are going to work like this. We're going to have a private network that's got to be on the 10.16.2.0/24 network. I give this the IP, the static IP of 150, 10.16.2.150. That's static. That's programmed into this machine. Yes, you can change it. No, I do not recommend you do change it. And then you're going to need a second NIC that's going to give you internet. In this case, I have a NAN a NAT set up. If I go back to the console, let me go back to the shell. I can show you their interfaces. So the KVM acceleration can be used. Let me go back to that shell. All right. And let me do it if config. There's going to be a lot, so I'm going to do more. As you can see, I have one for Docker. We could talk about Docker in a second. Ethernet 0, which is, again, my 10.16.2.150 static. And then I have a DHCP assigned one to my WAN. Again, I created that Ethernet one. Both those networks I created in Virtual Machine Manager. Not that you need to know how to use this, but I'll just show you the details on it. Connection details, virtual networks. These are the ones I've created. These are the ones I'm connected to. Private net and WAN. The non-negotiable one is going to be this 122 network, the 192.168, and that's on the bottom here. 192.168.122.1. That's what's going to give us internet. I had, in order to get internet in our labs, which would be nice to ping 1.1.1.1 or 8.8.8.8. I had to program those in. So you're going to need to have a virtual bridge of 192.168.122.1. We'll deal with all those excruciating details in the install video. Right now, I want to get you into GNS3. So why do we have this GNS server? Again, this GNS server is going to have 2 things, and it's right there in the middle, right above OK. Images and projects are stored in options GNS3. So it's going to have images of machines, switches, routers, firewalls. You don't have to set those up yourself. I'll be setting up those for you, and we'll see those in a second. And projects, so we're going to open up projects for our practices, labs, practices. Working our way through those. We're going to be using these in 162 Networks 3 or Advanced Networks Topics or whatever we're calling it this semester. So 162 is probably not going to change, and we're going to be using it in 251. Maybe we'll use it 161. Anyway. This is a powerful tool that's quite dynamic that we can use in many different areas. We're certainly going to use this in 162 because this is the only way to simulate Cisco devices without stealing Cisco software. So anyway, there we are. So that being said, here's the virtual machine. Now, I don't even need to run this, right? Again, you might need to because if you're running VMware or something like that, it's not going to like you closing out that window. Me, on the other hand, with KVM, it's still running in the background. That's just a pretty picture into the machine. All right, let's click on GNS3. I don't know how far along we are in this video. But we're pretty far along, and I'm finally getting to the thing we're supposed to talk about. Pretty sad. There we go. So here's GNS3 right here. I'm going to bring this up. Again, how to install it is another video. Notice it comes up with profiles right off the bat. I have 2 profiles right here. Default is for a local machine. That's for me to play around with. It's on the local machine. It is going to be a little bit quicker. And the next one is stick. Okay. Now, the big point here is these 2 profiles are set up differently. One profile, default, is going to use this local machine as a server. Okay, when I say this local machine, I mean my laptop right here will be the server. Okay, there will be no looking up anything on a virtual machine. The stick one, and this is the way we're going to set this up for our labs, is going to do everything on the virtual machine. It's going to boot up virtual machines. It's going to simulate appliances. It's going to save projects and work on projects off this machine. All the actual saving of everything is going to be on this virtual machine. Again, we do this because simulating network equipment is difficult. Switches do not act like PCs. There's a special image called Cisco IOU that Internetworking Operating System, and in Unix is I think what it exactly stands for, and it's running in this gns3 virtual machine. So simulating switches is tough. Okay, simulating routers and firewalls not so much because they're essentially just PCs. But because we're running it on this virtual machine, that's the way it needs to work. Okay. And plus all your projects are in here, so you just got to download this one thing, and hopefully it has all your projects. Hopefully, because I got to get them all done. All right, so there's Stick. I'm going to create a new one, so hopefully when you first come up, you'll see this. So I'm going to make a new one called Sticky. Sticky. Not that we ever use that in the IT department. Well, that would be Stick It too. But anyway, Sticky. So we'll create a new profile called Sticky. It's actually going to create a local server temporarily, and then I'm going to tell it to... I could just tell it to run the appliances in the virtual machine, right? Which would be gns3, right? But then all the projects would be saved to my local hard drive. You could do that. I would recommend run appliances on a remote server, and that way you can just hit this server that's running right there. All right. That's what I would. That's personally the way I think you should do it. Although I guess you could do it. Anyway, that's the way I've been setting it up. So I'm going to hit next. All right. I'm going to tell it the IP address. Again, this is going to be the 10.16.2.150. All right. Again, we'll talk about this in setup. This isn't really a setup. What I'm trying to show you is the difference. Okay. I hit next. It's going to shut down the local server. That's going to take a couple seconds. For whatever reason, it takes a little while. And then it's going to contact 10.16.2.150. By the way, the authentication is turned off. There we go. So I'm going to hit finish. It's going to tell me things about my server. There's the main server. It's rather bored right now. All right. So now this is the actual interface of GNS3. Now, the good thing is with the appliances right here, as you can see, these are appliances. If you loaded this up and told the local server, a lot of these, this wouldn't show up, this wouldn't show up, this wouldn't show up, this wouldn't show up, that wouldn't show up. Certainly this wouldn't show up, a Cisco firewall, and a router and a switch, okay, would not show up. These are the devices we're going to be using in our labs, okay. Hopefully in the future you'll see Juniper as well in here. But right now I'm just happy to get these Cisco devices working, okay. So we'll talk about setting that stuff up in a second. Real quick, the layout. I'm not a big fan of this layout. It gives way too much real estate to the console, which is nice and all. Topology summary is important, but what I like to do is stick that in the corner. And I like to click and see, I've just got a title bar. I'm just going to click and drag and get server summary, which is particularly useless because there's only one server. But it's good to know how much RAM I'm eating up, which I'm already at 22%. Speaking of which, going back to that, if anyone has any questions about that, let me open that up and let me click details again. CPUs I set to 1. If you want to bump that up to 2, that's up to you. And memory, I set as a default of 2048, 2 gig. Again, people can bump that up if you want. I do recommend going at least to 4 gig. It'll run much better. But I had to worry about compatibility. So there you go. And that's why we're already at 22%, because we're using a quarter of that 2 gigs of memory. But I like to put that stuff down. It gives me more room for the project. And I can shrink this down a little bit later if I so want. I click on it twice and it goes away, right? Here are the switches. I click that once, it goes away. All right. This is built for network geeks. All right. So topology summary, there's nothing here. This is where the nodes are going to go. Let me do this right now. Let me show you what it is to what it's like to open up a project. So, because that's what you're going to be primarily doing. For the practices, you're going to hit File, Open Project. You can see how far along I am. I'm not very far along. Right here, I have CIT 251. I also have a test where I've been playing around with getting the Cisco devices up and running. So I have CIT 251.PTC, which is short for practice.1 or 1.2. Now, when you open up a practice to work as your workspace, what I would recommend is all changes get saved immediately, right? So if you make any configuration changes, it's going to be saved and you won't be able to start over. What I would do is click duplicate, all right? And I would put, for my personal references, right, the date. So right now today is 1.8, I believe. So I got 2020 1.8 and my name, just for just to sound like Christopher Walken, I'll say just my name. So there's my name, all right? Just to put it all down there, and then I have it. I'm going to create that project, okay? It's going to take a couple seconds because it has to copy it over. And if you looked at the file, it's right now it's copying it over on that virtual machine running over there, right? It's doing it over IP, which, again, that might be something we change later. But right now it's working. So now that I've duplicated that, I can open that one up, okay? So I hit open, and I hit OK. And here's going to be the first lab for 251 right here, which is going to be a firewall class. Now, if you notice, when it comes up, not all devices are enabled to start off with, right? So let's bring up, well, first we have to bring up our firewall, which brings up all connectivity. But this is the layout, right? And everything should be locked. Good. I was checking that. Hopefully I did that before I did. Everything is locked. You could move things around though. If you right click on this and you hit unlock, I can move it around. Furthermore, if I really want to be an experimental, and you can do this, use your own project, you opened it, and you know how much I enjoy playing around, although do the labs as they say, but after you're done with the lab, play around as much as you want. Please learn. So what I could do is get rid of this. So what I'm going to do is hit delete. I right click on the connection, and I can go ahead and I can connect Ethernet 0 to Ethernet 4 over here and connect it to the inside network if I so desired, right? Again, these are all options. Let's not mess with the lab too much. Again, however, I've created my own copy so I can play with it as much as I want. All right. So if you want to unlock things and move things around, that's fine too. Notice right there, I went to the connection tool. That's what that is. This is wires, essentially. It doesn't look like wires, but it is wires. I've done my best to add documentation like these labels and these pictures to help you understand what you're doing. Real quick, I just want to show you how gns3 works, okay? So I have a workstation right here. I can right-click on it. When I right-click on it, I'm going to get all kinds of options. Two things you're really concerned about to get labs done is console and the start, stop, and suspend commands. So if I start something up, it's going to start it up. You're going to see this jump up in RAM too because I'm starting up the system, right? And that system is now start, and you'll see it down here, workstation. It is now clicked on that, right? So, or it's now green, right? I have a little up-down tree over here, right? Red for down, green for up. Let's go through, and I'm going to right-click and hit start on the firewall. I'm going to get a warning. It's going to be a yellow warning up here. There it is, telling me that I am dangerously low on RAM. Okay, I agree with them. I am, but I set this lab up to eat up, when it's all said and done, about 60% of the RAM when we get all these servers up and running. These are running these are Docker images, all these. This one actually has a workstation. I'll double click on it. Let me fix that real quick. Oh, you know what? I know what happened. I was playing with it. See, this is something I have to change back, so I have to configure. For some reason, my auto VNC is changed. Well, I guess this is good for. Oh, you know what? Because I'm a new profile. So preferences, it defaulted back to another VNC program. These are your preferences. So I'm going to do File, Edit, Preferences. You can make snapshots as you go through, by the way. So if you want to pause, you can make a snapshot of where you are in the lab. So here you go. Here's our gns3 server. There's our server information. What I want to know, what they want to know is the VNC. I got the wrong one set up here. I need to edit this and select. I'm using Vin-Agree, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have a different one, especially if you're in Windows. So that's a very Linux install. So when I double click on this, I'm going to get a VNC window, right, which is a remote desktop into it. Okay. Check it out though. It has a web browser. That is exciting. In that web browser, I'm going to go to, oh, I don't have any web right now. I'll bring up the internet terminal. I'll bring up a terminal. It's running Linux, of course. I think. Pretty sure. Let's say etc. I don't want cat. I want a CD. I want a cat. OS release. Yeah, it is running a Debian version of Linux. Anyway, so anyway, in the meantime, I want to ping 1.1.1.1. The internets. I got the internets. Fantastic. All right, there you go. So we have internets. That's because my firewall is doing its job. Anyway, point is, this is how gns3 works, right? I have a little workstation. I can do work. I can bring up a web server. If I right-click on this, I hit start. I think the inside is by default up in this. I think it's the DMZ that's down. So I can click on this, and let's bring up the inside. So I'm going to do www.web inside. There it is. In web is what I wanted. And there you go. Yay! It's the inside web server. As you can tell, my awesome web design skills have not improved. There you go. So there. But I can go to web pages. I can ping things around. That's the important thing. I can go in my firewall. If I go into my firewall, it's going to bring up a VNC because, because it's a firewall. So if I click console, it's going to bring up a firewall over here. You're going to see that's unlicensed. I can log in. I can do firewall thingies like show the access list. All right. What is it? Users in? Yes, users in. So there's my firewall. All right, or there's my access list for the user's interface. Point is, this is our simulator. You notice your VNC right here. I have to hit Control Escape to get out of this because it's not a GUI. But I have little tabs up here. This gets me to the firewall. This just comes up as X11. I haven't had time to fully play with trying to change that, but it is what it is. That's the name of the. I named it workstation here, but it's not showing up here. So, and I could just close this out if I wanted to. If I control a switch or a router, it's going to kind of look like this. It's going to set up a telnet connection, right? And that's what it's doing. In my case with Linux, it's going to bring up a little. Prompt. In your case of Windows, it'll probably bring up whatever you have for Telnet. I would recommend a couple different programs, which I'll bring up in the install video. But here it is. It's bringing up my actual console screen. Again, ls cd. I'm just curious at this point. Cd etc. And then I'm going to just do a cat on OS release. This is a Docker that was being, there you go, it's running a lightweight Ubuntu 14.04. There you go, trusty tar. All right, so let's close that out. All right, so this is the GNC. This is why I'm also making these little checkup. Layout, we talked about that. Opening up, duplicating projects, we talked about that. The up-down tree. VNC, we just talked about that. Telnet. Saving, lack thereof. Everything I've just done, whoops, let's go back to this, go down to my other desktop, to the gns3. Everything I've just done, it's going to be saved, right? If I open up this project, let's make it something just ghastly horrible looking by unlocking the firewall. Let's unlock it. Oh, it's confused because I have multiple things selected. All right, unlock item. Ugh, that's ugly, right? Point is, if I do file quit, right? Do I sure you want to quit? Yeah. And then I bring it back up. I'm going to select sticky. Okay. There's the project still saved right there. I hit OK. Whoop. Yeah, it's still saving on the hard drive. My poor virtual machine. Yeah, should have been up. There it is running. It's finally done saving it. Let's do it. Let's open it. File open project. There it goes. Still ugly. Point is, I didn't save that. It saves automatically. That's why we make duplicates. All right. All right. Lack thereof. Adding devices, adding connections. I talked a little bit about adding connections. Let's add a device, particularly a Cisco device. That'll be fun. And then we'll call it a video. All right. Here's my firewall. Put it back in the middle. Let's lock it just for fun. That way, if I click and drag it by accident, it needs to be brought back up. By the way, you're going to have to bring machines up when they first come up. That might not be true so much in the future, but usually in the lab or the practices, the first thing I'm going to have you do is bring up all your machines. And my poor RAM is just going to go all gobbledygook and getting eaten up, but that's life. All right. Slowly, the RAM is going to keep dripping, and as soon as the CPU can get all that data in the RAM, it's going to keep eating it up. It's at 100%. It's going to get up to about 60 when it's all said and done, or at least when it's in use. There you go. That's been my experience. Or at 60s. There you go. So I ended up in 69. I'll probably take a little less over time. But this is where this project ends up. I keep an eye on that. I try to keep it reasonable. I know people don't have the super powerful machines. All right. Anyway, so let's add a device. Let's add a Cisco device. We're gonna have two Cisco simulators here. We're gonna have an iOS switch and a Cisco iOS router. Let's add a switch because it eats up a little bit more memory. I'm going to grab that, put it over here. It's called SW1 off the bat. It's not configured. It's nice and stupid. Let's plug it in to show you what plugging in works in. I'm going to go down. So we have routers, switches, end devices. Okay. Everything. And then connections, right? Connections, I just simply click on the thing I want. I tell it what port I'm plugging into. And I click on here and tell it what port I'm plugging into here. All right, now we have another switch. We're going to create another network. I then, in order to get into this machine, I can right-click, or I can go over here and select it again and and say I don't want to do connections anymore. I can right-click on this device. Let's just start it. Whee! And let's go to the console. And I'm going to get this. I'm just telnetting right into it, right? And there it is. That is a Cisco device coming up. This is a real image of a real Cisco device. It's a real boy, or so it thinks. It's actual virtual machine running in GNS3, a VM. All right. So there you go. I'm out of RAM at this point. This is why these aren't all Cisco switches, by the way. These are all dumb switches. And by the way, if you really want to mark something as yours, and you want to change the symbol, by all means. Matter of fact, it might end up not being that symbol when it's all said and done. I like this symbol much better. Not that. Anyway. Here we go. Ethernet switch. All right. Even though it's the same as that, which I don't like. But anyway, so again, I'm bringing up that console there. There's the console. I'll be able to do my work. I can config T. I can config T, work fingers. I can exit. I can show run. All right, I can do everything I can do on a Cisco switch. All right, that is, in all intents and purposes, for at least for these practices, a Cisco switch. All right, that is going to be GNS3. I hope we have fun. We'll have workstations. I'll be putting more devices in here. You'll see a Kali Linux pop up. This is a virtual PC. It eats up a little bit more RAM. I like this web term. That's what this is a web term server because it has a browser. And it's just easy to use. This just gives you basic Ethernet tools. NAT devices give you internet. That's how I was able to ping the internet here. If I bring this back up and I can ping the internet, that's how I was doing it. Was through the internets thing. I can actually get to internets. So there you go. There you go. It panicked me for a second. So there you go. All right, that's GNS3. You should see more devices here. Maybe we'll put a Kali box for security class. Maybe we'll put other things in here. I got to work my way through the labs and get them all up there. But anyway, so there you go. All right. Yeah. So by the way, you could also set up your other profile if you want. Sure. Let's exit. If I real quick just wanted to show you what the other profile. Oh, I want to bring up VirtualBox. I want to bring up GNS3. Default is the local server. I hit OK. It's going to connect up to a local server. Here was test, a little test thing. I don't even, yeah, this is just a disaster. Yeah, there you go. So it was just a disaster. If you click on here, again, this is me testing with things, IOU, work L3, right? I was really banging things out just playing with this, getting this working. But this is on the local server. It won't work, I think. I bring it over here. Yeah, not config. It's just a disaster. But if I brought up switch, I could bring up a switch. There we go. Or not even that. This is all broken. This is me playing with our firewalls. Anyway, so there you go. There you have it. All right. And it's, as you can see right here, these are stats on my local laptop, not a server, right? So I'm running this on my local laptop. We're not going to do that. We're going to run it off this virtual machine, simple for good use. All right. So I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to just make sure I've got everything. Adding connections. We talked about that. All right. I've talked too long. I've gone too far. I'm going to stop the recording. I'll talk to you later. Bye.